do 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 bow banana dun 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 bow banana. What's up, Coach Kevin? How you doing? How you living?
I'm okay.
You're just okay?
Yeah. I didn't take my ADHD medication
Uh-oh.
today, so I'm extra tired and extra hungry, which is good. That means I'll sleep and eat really well tonight.
There you go. Plug myself in here. Sound check.
Sound check.
Sound check.
I'm sounding. I'm also checking.
I saw something on YouTube that I thought you might be interested in.
Blackpink?
What?
More Blackpink? I watched the video of Diogenes you posted last night.
Wait, what?
You posted a video on Diogenes.
Who's posted a video on what?
Diogenes? You did? On Facebook?
I posted a video on what?
On the Facebook.
About what?
Diogenes.
Oh, yes. I didn't actually watch it.
I did.
Was it good?
It was good.
Was it accurate?
It tracked with what I had known.
Okay.
But I had never, I thought about Diogenes a lot, but I never thought about, because I knew he kind of threw off materialism, but I've never thought about completely throwing off, like, manners.
Yeah, that was his whole thing. He was like...
Yeah, like, I can kind of appreciate, like, not being materialistic. Maybe
like rude and... No,
yeah, but like rude.
It's like a bad...
Yeah, like...
I think he just didn't want to be liked by anybody. Like, that was kind of the thing, you know? Like, he antagonized people on purpose.
Why?
I don't know why. I was hoping you might tell me.
I don't know. See, like, I'm not very materialistic, but I do believe in being polite to people. But maybe that's just because...
You were raised well.
No, probably not. I do wonder sometimes, like, if I'm only nice because I'm not in a position where I can be
We
not
chopped
nice
off
to
our
people.
heads here. What?
Like, you know, like, am I nice because I'm a nice person, or am I nice because, like, I have to be nice? Or, like,
Why do you have to be nice? You don't have to be nice.
Well,
You can be a jerk.
Well, I couldn't. If I was a jerk to you, you probably would want me around.
I don't want you around anyway. Who says I wanted you? You're assuming a lot of facts, not in evidence.
Well,
I call that lack of foundation.
Making assumptions here. You know, like
you know, we were talking about someone. We'll keep the name not, but like someone who is actually he's not rude to the people around him. He's just rude to the people outside of his circle, right? I mean,
Is violence considered to be rude?
I think violent behavior is. I mean, there's violence and there's like a latent level of violence, right? There's that violence that's just sort of bubbling. It doesn't mean you like punch everybody when you walk down the street, but there's like a thing of I want an excuse to punch you in the face, right? Like that type of.
And
vibe.
if you act wrong, then I'm gonna.
Even if you act sort of right, you're still liable to get slapped.
That's not a good thing, but go on.
Politeness is huge.
Which is weird, like, I can't imagine I can see a benefit of throwing away materialism, like, in your own personal life, but, like, I believe that, like, human happiness can be achieved without materialistic things, but I don't believe it can be achieved without people. I don't know, I'm not really a be in the woods by myself kind of guy.
Right.
And like it's the thing with Diogenes is it's not like he was living in the woods.
No, he was in the city. If you were in the woods, you were a barbarian.
Yeah, like
in ancient Greece, right?
So
you had no rights.
Why live with people if you're going to choose not to?
Well, here's the interesting thing that you mentioned that. You know, just by being a citizen of Athens, even the most destitute, annoying, disease-ridden, whatever, you know, person, if you were a citizen of Athens.
Was he stripped of his citizenship?
Well, he was of another city, and then he came to Athens.
Okay.
But maybe he wasn't a citizen. I don't know. That's an interesting question to me, that whether or not he had citizenship. But even if you were inside the city, right, you were accorded certain rights.
Yeah.
And privileges, if you will.
Oh, are we going?
Like he was tolerated.
Uh-huh.
But if you were outside the walls, I think you were basically free shot on you. You know, like anybody could do whatever they wanted. So I don't know what the actual dynamic was in Greek civilization or in Athens about, you know, how far you could push people, because my general sense was that if you were considered at least to be part of the community,
Yeah.
You know, there was a level of tolerance that you were granted, but I can't imagine you would get very far. I mean, there's stories about him peeing on people, right?
Yeah.
Throwing his poo at people. That sort of behavior kind of strikes me as like, that might get you killed in San Jose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Never mind, you know,
Yeah.
3,000 years ago in Athens. Can you imagine? I mean, I don't know who he's throwing poo at, but
Well, it's
if
like,
you threw a poo at me and I was...
throwing poo is not the worst of his ideas. Like, they did a lot of work to censor him in the beginning of the formation of the Cynics, but
he actually came from a good family at some point,
Yeah.
right? He was a prominent person in Greek...
until he and his father started forging coins, and then they got...
right, but it's like, it's like,
He was educated.
like Jared Kushner, for example. His father went to jail and was convicted and went to jail for like some various fraudulent activities and witness tampering and other things. And then, but you know, Jared Kushner's allowed to run around. No one really holds that against him.
Yeah.
Right? Nor should they, right? Like necessarily. But back then he was kind of ostracized, right? He was thrown out of his city along with his father.
Because he ended up still like, he was able to be very well known, even in his living in barrels situation and like jerking off in public, all sorts of activities. He would still have,
It boggles my mind, like why that was tolerated, right? I mean, there must be some other custom or practice that was operating, because that sort of thing, you know, if you go outside right now and you start doing the things that the Ajans did, they will take you away to some mental facility, right? It will not be, even as liberal and civilized a society as we are, would not just be like humored by this and say, ha ha, he's, you know, even if he was spouting, you know, stoic philosophy or whatever, skeptical philosophy. Was he a skeptic? He was a skeptic, right? Cynic. Some, you know, to the extent anyone would recognize that.
Yeah.
But even if you were speaking words of wisdom while you were doing these terrible things in public, you know, they'd just cart you away. They'd probably medicate you. But in Athens, for some reason, this foreigner is allowed to like spout off while doing all these crazy things.
Do you think that has value?
What?
Like, do you think he wasn't carted off because there was some sort of recognized value in the society?
I think he must have been recognized for what he was saying and what he was doing he must have been tolerated or been under the, I mean, I'm speculating here, but I imagine he might have been placed under the protection of some other citizen or important figure who said, no, he's a terrible person, but I'll vouch for him and, you know, send me the bill for whatever damage he did. I mean, I can imagine that. It's pure speculation, but like, why would this random, you know, outcast
be remembered at all?
Or be permitted to live, or not just booted out of the city?
I've been reading the book I told you about,
Uh-huh.
and they go over, like, part of it is they go over the history of like racist ideas from like the Greeks and Roman philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was interesting. Something I never like thought of or read about was that sort of that line. It's
How were the Romans racist? I thought they just didn't like anyone who wasn't Roman.
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, we're Romans and you're not.
Or like they started to make the distinction of like who could be slaves and who couldn't be slaves, I think. And I think it was more acceptable to choose people with different colored skin at the time. And that was gone over extensively. It's a really good book. I wish I had the ability to explain more things about it, but I'm still in the beginning part.
I'm reading something similar where it talks about the ideas, the philosophical ideas of, you know, the four major, you know, fathers of the Constitution, the founders of the Constitution, you know, the country. It was like Washington, Madison, Jefferson, and Hamilton. I think Hamilton. Maybe not Hamilton. It was Madison, Jefferson.
Who was it, Franklin?
It was not Franklin. It could have been Franklin. I mean, you could throw Franklin in there, but he's.
I feel like you usually throw Franklin in when that time.
Franklin's one of those guys that he did a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but he didn't like when you look at all these guys, they all were
pretty amazing in what they did, you know, in the breadth of their experiences and their, you know, what they did during their lifetimes. But they talked about how the Greeks, or I'm sorry, the Romans, and in particular Seneca, was the most important, no, not Seneca, Cicero was, I think it was Cicero, was much, the Romans were much more important to that, in that time period than the Greeks.
In terms of what?
In terms of influence. They all studied Rome. They all studied Roman history. But the lessons that they were, you know, they liked Cicero because he was like the last, Cicero, I always get Cicero and Seneca mixed up, but Cicero was like one of the last consuls before before Julius Caesar and created the empire. So they looked at him as like a hero because he was like a hero of the Roman Republic. And but you know, when you actually look at what Cicero wrote and where he was coming from, not so admirable.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people think like can't square up like why did the founding fathers, you know, say all these beautiful things about rights and equality, but at the same time they were like, some of them were slaveholders, or made excuses, or tolerated slavery, or they were also terrible misogynists, and there's some deep hypocrisy. But if you go and look at who they were studying and admiring and emulating at the time, it was the same thing. It's the same thing going all the way back to Plato and Aristotle, right? Through the Romans, of like, these are guys, philosophers, who are the fathers of liberal, you know, thought, and yet if you go and you read Aristotle, you will find a very deep discussion on the justification of slavery.
Yeah.
And same thing with Cicero, and same thing with Plato. You know, nobody. In fact, was it the Cynics? It was the Sophists, I believe, who were criticized for basically saying, you know, there is no excuse for slavery. You know, and aren't men all equal? Really? I mean, you say they're equal, but then you have this slavery, and so the Sophists got it. You know, they were rejected. They were, you know, because we don't have any real Sophist writings left.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of the arguments. A lot of the arguments that between Plato and Aristotle later, you know, was with the Sophists and showing why the Sophists were wrong. And it was actually a threat. It was considered a threat to, you know, the Greek city-state. The idea of one to have this like dangerous idea of actual equality and getting rid of slavery and the equality of all men and women.
Radical.
So the Sophists get this bad rap from, you know, basically because Plato and Aristotle tore them a new one, but they didn't exactly have a free opportunity to rebut, right? These are all arguments that are made. The Sophists made the mistake of just talking about it and never writing anything down that lasted through the ages. So if you want your arguments to stand the test of time, you better write them down somewhere where they don't get lost.
Push-ups, right? My favorite.
No? Why?
No, I love them.
You love them.
Yeah. Oh. What else should we talk about? We were talking about values yesterday.
Values. I was thinking about a lot in the car today when I was coming over.
Like, and I think part of the reason, and to like swing this back to jiu-jitsu, like, sorry for those who are not understanding what's going on. Rich and I were talking about like how one determines their own values, and part of the appeal that like jiu-jitsu always had was like it creates a kind of an environment where you don't have time to think, and usually I feel like in a good role where jiu-jitsu is happening between two people, like your values, you can find out your values based on how you make decisions, right? Like when everything's on the line, not everything, but like when the pressure's on,
Yes.
how do you make decisions? What do you do? Like how do you react to things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I think when you don't have time to think, like your true intentions tend to come out. You know, like I feel like when I roll with somebody, I know them as a better person than if I just talk to them casually, right? Like, of course, like you could have a deep conversation to get to know someone, but I feel like, you know, jiu-jitsu is one of those things that can kind of bypass the weird stage of like feeling people out, where it's just, you know, it's they say that like it all comes out on the mat, like everything that happens on the mat is true and honest, and I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's like that?
I think that crises can reveal character, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I think that's a truism. People tend to rise to the challenge or sink to the circumstances, right? I mean, and you can never really tell that. I think it's one of the interesting things about jiu-jitsu is that if your intent or purpose is to develop that kind of calm under pressure, it will help you do that.
Do you think you have to have the intention to do it? You probably do a little bit.
If you want to develop it, right? If it's something that's important to you, if you value it, then it's something that you can do. You can develop that, you know, that composure.
Yeah, because you can always choose to freak out.
I think, you know, it's interesting, you know, it depends on everybody's different. I don't know that there's ever, like we always say, there's a lot of right answers, or no, there's a lot of wrong answers. Yeah. There's a lot of, no. What was it? There's many right ways, but definitely a few very wrong ways. Other way?
Many wrong ways to do it, but only a couple right ways to do things.
Maybe that's right.
Something like that.
There's no one right way, but there's definitely a lot of wrong ways.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right way to say
That's
it.
better.
You know, when you first start training with somebody, you can see their personality, right? You can see the people who come in and they meet whatever the challenge is with like a violent outburst of physical whatever. Not necessarily aggression, but just, I'm just gonna go as hard as I can. And then you have the people that you see are like a little more thoughtful, a little more reserved. And I think that is indicative of someone's general personality, right? Like the really big kid who has always been told to be gentle and has internalized that and don't hurt anybody, you're big. And that guy comes in, he starts rolling. Even though he's big and strong, he might be very tentative and easygoing, as opposed to the person who's maybe never been told that,
Yeah.
and just freaks out. Like I remember when Jason Khalifa used to come in, and you know, Jason is not like as incredibly strong as he is. He doesn't. I don't think he ever tries to hurt anybody. I think he's actually very conscientious about not. I mean, if it's you or me, he doesn't care, right? If you're a black belt, he doesn't care, nor should he.
I've never had.
But if you're a white belt, he's not going to go out of his way to like just wreck you for the sake of wrecking you. I remember one time he came in, and there was another guy who came in who was much smaller than him, and they wanted to roll. And this guy, it's something. Well, he was not a big dude. He was not a big dude. He wasn't out of shape or anything, but he just was not in any way equipped to like go all out with a guy as athletic as Khalifa. Just wasn't.
Yeah.
And I told him, because I could see the look in his eye of like terror. Like it was.
They came in together?
They came in, they weren't together, they weren't friends, but like he came in, it was like a lunchtime, and the other guy came in.
Yeah.
And it's probably like, I was just gonna roll with Jason, and then this guy came in, wanted to do a class, and I was like, sure.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Here, roll with this world champion athlete real quick.
Well, but no, it wasn't my suggestion. It was, you know, they wanted, like, the guy wanted to, and he just went apeshit.
On Jason?
On Jason. Because he, you know, it's this attitude of like, he was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
He was terrified. I mean, the look in his eye was just.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jason was in the beginning, it was like very indulgent. And then at some point, you're just like, he got kicked in the face or kicked in the nuts or something. And he was just like, all right, I'm gonna have to protect myself here and smash down on you. And the guy, and he didn't kill the guy, he didn't hurt him, but it's I think indicative of kind of different personalities that people bring in. Some people just want to come in and test themselves and are going to go all out no matter what their lack or knowledge is. Whereas other people are just a little more, they're going to hang back a little bit and try to learn. And that doesn't mean they can't evolve and change over time. Most of them do. But
yeah.
you know, there is some, as people go on and get better, I think they adjust themselves to the situations about how they're going to react. Like, if I'm training with, you know, somebody who's really, really good, I'm probably not going to go all out with them.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just not. It's not what it comes. Now, you may. I know you have in the past, because you're more interested in kind of like judging or gauging yourself against, you know, the top guys, seeing where you are. There's nothing wrong with that, and they don't mind, as far as I could see, right? Like, it's just a different.
Yeah.
It's a different. We're at different stages. We're different people. We have different personalities, right? We have different judgments, whatever. Not a right or wrong. You have to be careful who you do that with, right? You could get hurt. Somebody could get offended.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't think the best guys really do. I think they're used to it and they actually enjoy it. Right?
What about like average people? Do you have to be good at jiu-jitsu for your personality to show up?
No. I mean, your personality is your personality. I think it reveals itself. I think you're right that you can really judge a person. I mean, not judge them in like you've been judged, but like you can kind of get a sense of a person's personality by how they're acting on the mat.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes there's a lack of experience, there's a lack of wisdom, of discretion. Sometimes, you know, people are just like, oh, we're just going to go all out. That's what I do. I go all out all the time. And that's indicative of someone's personality. And other people are like, well, I don't know, you know, I'm going to see what's going on.
Some people have more shades.
Some people go super hard with people that they know that they can dominate, right? How many times have you seen that?
Yeah.
The person who comes in, they're whatever, and they just smash, and then when somebody who's kind of their equal or superior comes around, then they're all meek and mild, and they don't want to, oh, I'm tired, or oh, I'm, you know, my hammy's a little sore, you know, they don't want to train anymore, right? We know those people,
Yeah.
right?
I'm not those people all the time.
No, I'm not saying you are that person, but I'm saying you see that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's almost like a meme. You know, there's like the 10 types of grapplers, and it's the one who's the tough guy, except when a better tough guy comes in, a tougher guy comes in, and then that person's all meek and mild. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the guy who will smash until the instructor shows up, and then he's all like, oh, you know. The guys who want to teach all the time, they walk you through everything, even though they suck. Like, these are all like stereotypical jiu-jitsu students, right? And I think the fake tough guy is definitely one of those jiu-jitsu stereotypes.
Is that really fake toughness, or is that just
That's like bullying.
That's like, it seems more like it's a knowledge of where you stand in the overall.
It's bullying. Like, if you're just beating up on people who you can beat up on, and then you like make excuses to not train hard with the people that you have trouble with, that makes you a bully in my book.
Well, are they not training hard, or are they just being like meek and polite?
They are being hypocritical and fake in my book.
That's not good.
I mean, I don't want to say like always and like that person could never be, but like you see this. You see the guys where the people come in, they go super rough.
I feel like I don't see that very much.
Probably because they don't last very long.
I don't know.
Right? They get drummed out pretty quick. They get injured.
Yeah.
You know, or what I always love is when those guys, you know, they're all tough, and then a small guy who's really good comes in and breaks them off.
Yeah.
You know, and I always love that. You know, and the level of butthurt and shock and surprise when the little guy fights back successfully. That's why I put my money down for jiu-jitsu every time. You know, that's the dream right there.
Do you remember Max?
Max.
He used to come in brown belt now. He was a purple belt when he came in. Like, smallish guy. He used to train, I think.
Yes. Yeah. He's really good.
Really
He was at Marcella's and then he left for Unity. I think he's at Unity now.
Yeah.
Yeah, super nice guy.
Ugh.
Super nice and really good.
Like, that was like.
You know, the thing is, this is a great example. Max was a guy who came in, and he was at Milton's, I think. I don't know where he started. He was at Milton's for a while. He was always really good, mild-mannered, nice, polite. You know,
So
a pleasure to have on the mat.
Yeah.
Really, just a super nice, super smart guy. You know, and you're like, wow. You know, like, this is what jiu-jitsu is all about.
Yeah.
Nice, mild-mannered, awesome.
And then take your head off.
And then, you know, he'd go to the tournament, and he'd win the tournament.
Yeah.
And he's in a tough division, right? Like, he's purple belt, brown belt, lightweight.
Yeah.
And he would win the divisions. And if you look at him, although, you know, if he takes his shirt off, you see he's in pretty good shape. He's pretty strong, pretty fit. But when he's just walking around, like, he doesn't look like much.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of like the Peter Parker. I don't want to call him a nerd because I don't think he's a nerd, but he's kind of in that mold. You know, like the mild-mannered looking guy who can just like totally rip your foot off.
He seems really nerdy. I like him. Yeah, so good. Ugh. Yeah. I miss him. That was fun. Remember when people used to come in and train?
Back when we could do jiu-jitsu.
Like from other academies?
Yeah, no. I
So
mean,
much fun.
that was like my favorite thing when people come and visit, and then you see, like I would see Max all the time, like at other tournaments,
Yeah,
and we'd say hi, you know, he's a super nice guy.
yeah. It's because he knew he was so good.
What's that?
It's because he knew he was good, you know? That's a man who is self-assured based on his abilities.
Yeah, he was, I mean, you know, I think he was just a regular guy. Who just, I mean, but who was extraordinary in terms of his skills, right? Like I like talk about values and what you value in other people, like the sort of qualities that you admire or value in other people. I think he has like a humility about him,
Yeah.
right? He's an accomplished person, like he's accomplished professionally. He's good at the sport that he does, you know. But he's not the type that comes in and is like loud and bragging and, you know, like.
You know, that is a very Marcelo vibe.
Yeah, he has a very Marcelo, but he's not. I don't know if he's as nice as Marcelo,
I think, well,
but he's pretty nice.
Marcelo is just extremely nice, so that would be a hard.
See, but again, this is what I always wonder about this. Like, there are the people who are very successful at what they do, but they're total assholes. And I'm always like, why are you an asshole? You are so successful. You should be happy. You should be nice to everyone. Why are you acting so miserable to everybody?
Maybe they're just only miserable when you're around.
Yeah, maybe it's me. Blame the victim.
See, that's the thing. Like back to the Diogenes, like throwing off manners. You know, I could see maybe being rude to a fraction of the people in my life. You know, probably not the best thing to do, but I could see it being done.
What people don't understand is that maybe people do understand this. There's no cost to being polite and nice to people. It costs you nothing to
That's
be
not
just
true.
a general, courteous person.
That's not true at all.
It is true.
Nuh-uh.
It is true. What is the cost?
You have to pay attention to them.
Not really.
Yeah, you do.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, here, let me put it this
Otherwise
way.
you're not actually
The
being
nominal
nice.
amount of attention that you have to pay to somebody to just be acknowledge them and like hold the door for them or say
Yeah.
thank you or you're welcome
Yeah.
or, you know, have a 2-second conversation with them.
Yeah.
The cost to you, right? I'll acknowledge that there is a minimal
Yeah.
cost,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
In your
Yeah.
attention span.
Uh-huh.
That the pluses of doing that far outweigh the negatives.
Why?
Because you never know who you're being rude to or who you're offending.
Uh-huh.
You never know.
Uh-huh.
You never know what that person is capable of, either in a positive or negative way, right? Like the classic example is you're going to your job interview and you go get your cup of coffee
Uh-huh.
and you don't hold the door for the person behind you, or you're rude to you're mean. You're not even, you're just doing your regular thing at the coffee
Yeah.
shop, and then you're mean to the person behind the counter because they got your change wrong or they got your order wrong, and you're a total jerk.
Uh-huh.
But unbeknownst to you, the person behind you
Who's hiring?
is the boss,
Yeah.
right? And so even if that person who's behind the counter is not like having sway over your life or has no impact over your life, everyone who's watching you may have some, and who knows, maybe at some point, you need some help. Maybe you have a flat tire, you need to make a phone call. Maybe you need to use the bathroom. Maybe there's something else that you need, and then you go back to that person and you say, hey, can I go get it? And the person's like, sorry, it's out of order.
I have two,
right?
I
So
have 2 points.
these things have consequences, both pro and con,
2 points,
or
2 points.
vice versa. You can be kind and nice to somebody, like almost never will being well, I shouldn't say almost never, but I'll qualify with almost. Usually being nice to a person doesn't come back to haunt you in a negative way. It can,
Yeah.
right? That's true. That's why I said almost never.
Yeah.
But
2 things.
usually it's gonna be at least.
2 things.
Yeah.
All right. First, it's not the option between being nice and rude. It's the option between being nice, being rude, and nothing.
Yeah, but nothing can often be seen as rude.
It can be.
If you don't hold the door for me, right? Look, if you're an old Chinese lady and you don't hold the door for me, I know why, right? You just don't hold doors. That's just not what they do in China.
Are we allowed? Okay.
No, I mean, right? I mean, if you go to like Kmart or H Mart, right? Some of them will hold the door for you, but the little old lady who came, they probably are not going to hold the door for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
So
I don't get
you're
offended because I'm like, you're not. This is not a thing. This is
Yeah.
not a thing for you.
Well,
Okay.
she wasn't being rude.
She's not being rude,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Because
what
she's
I'm
a
talking
little old
about.
lady.
That's what I'm talking about.
But if you're you,
What?
If I follow you, right, and you don't like let the door slam in my face when you could have just held it for me for a second,
Are you
I'm gonna be like, this dude
mad?
is kind of a d-bag.
You should just not let strangers upset you, instead of expect people to be polite.
I mean, look, it's up to you.
Look, I could.
Maybe they should just hold the door. Now, if they're
expecting
European,
people-
I might give them a pass. Or if you turn around and give me a Swedish accent, right, I might be like, oh, he's just a Swede. You know?
Like,
I'm not picking on Swedes. I don't know if
just
this is
have,
true.
Nubs for arms or something.
I mean, I don't know, right? Like, yeah, okay, I get it.
What
All
if
right.
I just have like an irrational fear of handles?
Okay, maybe.
So, but do
Okay,
I
you
have to
don't wanna
tell
touch
that
the
to you
door.
before you get mad, or like?
I mean, I'm not going to get so mad that I'm like yelling at you,
uh,
right? But I'll just be
But you'll
like
get mad.
annoyed. I'll be annoyed.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I'm annoyed. I'm
You'll
like,
get annoyed.
you're kind of a d-bag.
annoyed is a type of mad.
And I get even more annoyed when you do it to somebody else.
Like
if I-
like
so you don't-
tertiary annoyance.
Yes. Especially if it's like a little old lady coming behind you, and then you don't even hold the door.
So you just walk around getting mad at strangers for
All the time.
no
I'm
reason.
just annoyed. I don't get mad. I get annoyed.
That's a type of
I
mad.
get perturbed.
That's
I
mad
get
light.
I get annoyed. Yes.
It's like watered
I'm
down.
like, why?
mad.
This is the problem with our society is that we're not nicer
You
to
just
each other.
walk
Just as a
around
general rule.
being upset when people don't meet your expectations.
Yes.
That sounds awful.
I mean, this is like I expect more of people.
Yeah,
I think it would be a nicer world if we were all nicer to each other. Just in these small, little,
you shouldn't
insignificant ways.
expect it from people. Then you're going to be miserable. the
You know,
whole
now
time.
it's gotten to the point where I don't expect it. I'm not surprised by it, and so I'm just generally pissed off.
No,
all the
it
time.
should be like you expect nothing from anybody, and on the fine occasion when someone does hold the door open for you, you're
They even
ecstatic.
make me angrier.
That makes you angry too. Oh my gosh.
Depends on how they hold it. No, I mean, it's, you're right, I shouldn't care. I shouldn't care. I'm old fashioned, right? I think that there is value in actually extending common courtesy to people,
Uh-huh.
and that it actually makes things a better place for everyone. It actually helps you in the long run to be known as
Also,
as long as you're not known as
my-
being taken advantage
my
of, you
second
could be a
point.
nice person.
that it also seems like your stance on being polite is not purely, but kind of purely from a selfish perspective. Like you should be polite because A, if you're not polite, it might ruin your life,
Yes.
and B, if you are polite, it might bring you something.
I'd
Instead of
say
like,
that as more of like the Pascal's wager of politeness. You know what Pascal's wager is?
yeah,
Just because, like, even if you don't believe in anything that I believe in,
yeah, just hedging your bets.
you should just do it, right? You should just, even if you're in a terrible mood and you don't want to be, you purposefully don't want to be nice to people.
Yeah,
Like, you hate the barista
yeah,
because they always mess up your order, right? Even then, you should still be courteous to them,
yeah.
right? But I believe you should do that because it is actually good for everyone.
Yeah.
It actually makes the place a better place. You know what I mean? It makes it like you were saying. I remember it was like a year ago. You said that you have roommates, you do the dishes, and when somebody else's dishes are in the sink, you do their dishes, and then people start treating you differently. Your roommates start treating you a little bit better,
Yeah.
right? Or at least they were acknowledging your presence, or whatever.
Eye contact.
Right? I mean, they appreciate that. I think people appreciate those small gestures, and you build up goodwill. And I think that actually makes things easier and brings people together, not in any sort of like profound way, but in the aggregate, right? I think it kind of, when I just witness somebody doing a good deed, like it doesn't have to be a profound thing or a big thing, but just like a nice thing for somebody, it actually kind of puts me in a better mood. I see someone else doing something that I think that I approve of, that isn't for money or whatever, it's just a common gesture of common courtesy. And I think like, hey, there's somebody who's like just half decent in this world, who's like holding the door for the little old lady or helping the lady across the street with her groceries, or, any of those things, picking up the piece of trash on the ground
Yeah.
that somebody left behind.
I mean, I do like genuine, like polite gestures and people helping each other out. But I also I dislike where it seems like disingenuous.
Yes. Yeah. I don't like the cynical stuff where you see it's like a manipulative thing. Right.
Yeah,
That's like fake or insincere.
So like I had a conversation with my sister where we were talking about like how convenient it was to send people Christmas gifts over Amazon. Because you could just send it directly to
Yeah.
their house, and you
Yes.
could send it wrapped.
Yep.
And you could send. And at that
Yes.
point, I was just like, "That's very convenient that sounds terrible. Like, it just sounds like...
It's too easy. It takes away kind of the charm of gift giving or the point of gift giving, right?
Like,
I had to go to the store, I had to pick something out,
but like, that's the
I had
point.
to think about
that's
you,
the whole,
and then I had to bring it home, I had to wrap it, and
that is
then I
the
had to
gift.
bring it over to you and
That
hand
is
it to
the
you.
gift. That's the gift.
It's your time.
Nobody gives
It's your
a
time
crap
and attention.
about the item usually. Like, the item can be thoughtful sometimes, but I feel like, yeah, like,
It's the thought
and the effort, the
and the
time.
effort. Yes, that's true.
But
That's why you shouldn't ever get your girlfriend or wife a present from Amazon that way.
yeah,
That's a killer. Unless you're away, right? If you live far away from the recipient and you're not going to be able to see them, then maybe.
maybe
Okay.
that does track with our conversation about Diogenes, where like I think his main point was all acts of politeness are truly out of self-interest, and even though you might be able to justify them in some sense of overall well-being for the society, in the heart of things, people do what serves themselves.
Well,
Even if it does also.
I also wonder whether that perspective comes from some sort of specific cultural.
Where he was just
In that
isolated.
culture at that time, maybe the Athenians were just very insincere people, right? I don't know.
Do you think Athenians could be more materialistic than Americans?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know enough about ancient Greece.
I don't know.
I think they were pretty materialistic.
Yeah, but like they have less material, don't they?
I think there were. My understanding is that there's some deep hypocrisy at the root of Athenian democracy, and if that's something that bothers you or that you're focused on, then you're going to basically say you guys are all a bunch of hypocrites, right? And maybe that's where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about him, but so I always say it's always important to me to understand the actual, like, what was going on at the time and place. These ideas, when they get ported from 3,000 to 5,000 years ago into like common everyday language, you decontextualize them and they lose whatever. They're different. They're different so often than what the original thinker, speaker, writer was even talking about. You know, we just take it and we just take it for whatever the words mean to us today, as opposed to what the words meant to them then. And we're losing something always. I mean, in this case, you know, it's taken from the Greek. It's second or third hand, right, from Plato. Right? Was Plato talking about Diogenes, or was it Aristotle? I don't know. But you know what I mean, right? It's Greek,
Yeah.
and then it's getting translated. Probably got translated into Arabic, right? Because that's where we got it all from.
Yeah.
And then it gets translated back into Latin, and then English. And I don't know, maybe somebody has gone back now and translated from the original Greek if they even have it. I don't know where that text is. And then I read it. I don't know anything about ancient Greece. I just read the words and I say, oh yeah, this he must be talking about today. No, he's not. He's talking about something very different in a different language. I don't know what the hell he said. It's just like a huge game of telephone.
Yeah.
A 5,000 year game of telephone in different languages.
So is it worth reading at all?
It is worth reading, but with like anything,
With an air of like
skepticism and
it's like
and care, right? Like it's like something trapped in amber. It's like the
Bible.
it's like we don't know what the actual. You cannot know what the actual like primary source
Yeah.
said. So you have to approach it with caution. You know, and that's frustrating, but you can rely in a certain sense. This is like the beauty of scholarly work, is that, you know, you can at least rely somewhat as a starting point on people who know the languages that we're talking about and have spent their lives studying these ideas and can put them in context. And so if there's a person who is prominent within the field as the leading scholar, whether they're alive or dead, you could at least start with that person. I would say it's probably, yes, you should go to the original, you should read the original treatise, whatever, for what it's worth. But then, if you really want, I mean, this is why we have scholars and why people spend their lives studying this stuff. Because, look, if we could all just read what Diogenes wrote or what Plato wrote and understood it, we wouldn't need to have academics and scholars. We would all just do it ourselves. But that's why they're there. That's why they've dedicated their lives.
So then would it be better for me to just go read what the scholars wrote. And
No, like I said, you can read like whatever the
like,
closest thing to source
I
material.
can read a lot of things, but it doesn't mean it's gonna.
Well, I think in order to like have even an understanding of what that person, like that interpreter or what that scholar, whoever it is what they're talking about, is you have to at least start with like an understanding of what the text is that they're working from as well.
Yeah.
And
You know,
right, I mean, I can tell you all about Finnegan's Wake. I could speak for days about Finnegan's Wake,
Wow.
which is, you know what Finnegan's Wake is? So it's a book by James Joyce, right? It's one of the most seen as one of the most difficult books to actually read.
Is that why you chose it?
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that's indecipherable. Like if I just gave it to you and said, just start reading it, you would put it down. You would probably get about 2 pages in. You might be amused at first, and then you'd be like, I can't make heads or tails of this stuff. This is crazy. It's gobbledygook.
Yeah.
But having said that, it actually is helpful in that case to talk about like the framework of the book and kind of what is going on in there. So maybe we take Ulysses, which is the book that he wrote before that, which is also very complex. But you could read that book, like it's a novel, and you could read it. It's got a linear story. It's very different in terms of each chapter is different in terms of its style, its perspective, and its technically what he's doing narratively. But you could read it, and then we could have a conversation about this chapter of the book, right? You could go through it,
Yeah.
right? But it would be like that would probably be more helpful than me just telling you about the book. It would be more helpful for you to just read the book.
Yeah.
Right? I could, it's like Shakespeare. You could go read Shakespeare. You could read a play, right? You're not going to understand everything,
Yeah.
but you would read the play. You'd get a lot of it. It's written in English. It's an older, not form of English, but it's an older version.
Old.
It's not Old English. It's not Middle English, but it's like an older version of modern English.
Yeah.
That can be very difficult. And then we'd have to talk about like all the references that he's making that are not modern references. They're references to that you would know if you were an Elizabethan, peasant, or not peasant, but craftsperson.
An endless amount of background information per topic.
But you could talk, right? Like, so you have these guys who talk about like music in Shakespeare,
Yeah.
or a particular form of music, or you could talk about myth in Shakespeare, or you could talk about the psychology of, everyone's got their own little angle.
Yeah.
The politics of Shakespeare,
Yeah.
right? All these other things.
I'm already feeling overwhelmed.
Well, this is the thing. These are very rich texts that have a lot of meaning that is packed into them. It's why they're such prominent parts of the Western canon. So it's not going to be something that you just open up and just read. It's like the Bible, right? Like anybody could open up the Bible and read the Bible and be like, all right, I don't know what any of this shit means, but I understand,
You read
kind of
it,
more or less.
Yeah.
But then there's a rich history with packed within those pages that people spend their entire lives trying to study and explore and explain to the people that are interested in these topics. And it's the same, I don't know why people think they can go and they can pick up something by some ancient Greek philosopher and just read it and be like, yeah, I get it, this makes total sense to me. I mean, that's...
Well, that's the whole idea of these texts, right? Like the Bible is so significant because like these old ideas are somehow relevant generation after generation.
Yes, this is all great texts, all great ideas have both a local and a universal meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible was not written. Maybe I'm generalizing too much because there's many different parts of the Bible.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that almost none of the Bible is actually written for like the regular, everyday churchgoer, right? They're written for
Holy people.
for priests,
Yes.
or for what do they call them?
Jewish version.
Theologians. You know what I'm saying? Like, or they're meant for people who are proselytizing. Like, these are very religious people, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That's my understanding. It's written for.
It wasn't meant to be read by everybody. It
For
was
rabbis, right? I would say that the first, the first couple books is for rabbis, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, most Christians for thousands of years were illiterate, and the books it was in Latin, so they were Hebrew.
Yeah.
So they weren't. If you were some medieval peasant, you weren't like reading your Bible at night, right? You go to church, and probably the priest would read some section to you and tell you what it meant.
Yeah.
It wasn't written for you, you peon.
I mean, it was written for you, but not.
But yeah, not for you. It was for you to listen and obey.
I was actually thinking of the Old Testament, like Genesis book last night. And just like how I never thought about how that book is one of the oldest and first written accounts of like basic human behavior.
Sure.
You know, like the tendency for humans to be tempted, and then how natural it is to try and blame someone else for tempting them.
Yes.
And then the of course completely natural from God reaction to like
Get
kick
out.
them out, you know, and be vengeful. You know,
Yes.
like these are the most fundamental human traits that can be
Yes.
traced back as far as we can go.
Yes.
And I was just like,
As true today as it was then, right?
You know?
Like you can imagine some angry dad, you know, who's pissed off at his daughter or somebody else's daughter.
Yeah.
And is right as they're writing this, you know.
Or no,
I think that comes from another story. I think that
it happens in jiu-jitsu. I just thought of it with like, you know, angry, all-controlling teacher tells student, don't go over to that other academy.
Don't watch that video
Yeah.
about that with this technique.
They go out there, they learn things, they come back, and they're spreading all this secret knowledge, and you know that God finds out and kicks them out.
There you go.
Still not right. I don't know. Vengeance isn't ideal in the jiu-jitsu environment. I don't think. Like it's not. It's one of those things.
It's
that
human nature, right?
Human
You are
nature.
wrong.
Human nature
You want to
needs to be
vindicate
tempered.
that wrong
Talking is good.
using your words.
It's just it doesn't help.
What?
Like when you react to that one thing that made you mad, and then it's
It
never,
helps in that moment. It
It's
feels
never
really
good.
good.
It never ends there. It's not.
It
It's
never
not like the
ends
other
there.
person's like, oh yeah, like I deserve that. You know, it's like even if they do think they deserve it, they just don't like you forever now. It's not like they appreciate.
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person in general.
I mean, I think there's definitely times where I've been like, yeah, I deserve that. I messed up. I deserve that. Right? You recognize. Sometimes I appreciate the karma of things. So I'm like, yeah, you know what? I had that coming.
Doesn't make it good.
Well,
I think that attitude tends to perpetuate that attitude.
I tend not to do things that are going to provoke a retributive response
Yeah, but
in
like,
other people.
that's fine, but then what if you get a crazy person who's like, okay, like this is the rule where if someone pisses me off enough, I'm allowed to retaliate vengefully, right? But then you have a person who gets really easily, you know, set off base and has a tendency to retaliate. But from their perspective, they're completely in the right,
Yes, always.
you know?
Always. This is why
So
being a
that's-
victim is always like empowering and allows you to get away with all sorts of terrible things.
So that you can't, because you can't be sure at all times that the person who is being vengeful is in the right. That's not a good thing to follow. That's not a good philosophy to follow, at least in a jiu-jitsu academy.
I think those things, those people who are easily offended, right, and then lash out because they've been wronged, they don't last long, as a general rule. Not in jiu-jitsu generally, but
In life.
in life. Like they're not a person who generally, I'm not gonna say always, you know, is ostracized, but I think in general, we all kind of know a person like that, maybe more than one, who, you know, is always always plays the role of the victim.
Do you think everyone goes through that stage? I've noticed kids do that a lot, and I used to do that.
I think if you are raised on the idea of fairness, then
And physical violent justice is.
no. I mean, I don't want to go so far as physical violence, but it does kind of seem like that sometimes that it goes hand in hand. But like, if you're always thinking that the world is supposed to be fair, and you're always supposed to get like a fair shake and judged fairly, and you know, like, then when things don't work out your way, when you feel like you've been wronged or some injustice has been visited upon you, people have a tendency to become very bitter, and of course they don't look at themselves. And maybe they're blameless, but then they lash out at other people because the world is unfair.
Isn't that a niche idea?
I don't know. But, I mean, not to say that, you know, like there are things that happen where it is really not just unfair, but wrong, right? Somebody did say, you know, there are things that people can do to you that are
Malevolent.
evil or just wrong, and you should feel, right? I'm not gonna say like no one should ever feel like a victim. There's lots of things that you can be justifiably say, I am a victim of this. But there's that other part where you're like, you're not really a victim of anything other than like circumstance or fate, right? And sometimes, you know, you just gotta let that go and realize like, yeah, unfair things happen. Bad things happen to people unfairly. It's not because anybody is conspiring against them, and it doesn't mean you get to go be a D-bag because you feel like, you know, the world is against me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do have a tendency sometimes, like, when I make mistakes, it was all like the situation. And,
Yeah.
you know, it was just I was going with the flow that I was given.
Right.
But when other people make mistakes, it's super easy to attribute personal responsibility
Yes.
to other people. And,
Yes.
I don't know, something I'm working on, I think.
I think that's like human nature, right?
Yeah.
Right, to do that, to kind of paint yourself as like the, you know, the victim of circumstance in its best form, right? Like, but then other people are just like, they just did it on purpose and they suck.
Actually, I had a student ask me today, he was talking, and he was like, yeah, my boss is like, he seems like he's upset with me, and, you know, I don't think he likes the style that I work. Like, I get things done fast, but I think I'm not as accurate as I could be with my work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, well, what does your boss want? And his boss, I guess, wanted more accurate work. And I was like, well, you should do that. And he was like, yeah, like, but, you know, I do this, and I'm trying to tell him the reasoning why I'm doing this the way that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I was like, those are all great reasons to do that, but your boss probably doesn't want
care.
those reasons, you know, doesn't want the justification.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, it could be a bad boss, right? It could be. Could be a
But-
situation where the boss has, you know, has unrealistic.
but at the end of the day,
Expectations.
it's your boss. You know, it's a hard thing. Where unless like you can go, I don't know, you probably have more experience with bosses than I do, but I don't know.
Never make excuses.
I've
Don't make excuses.
yeah.
That's the, you know, you can't, you know, back when I was at the firm, I had a lot of bosses because I worked with a lot of different partners, and they all had different styles, right? I had a guy who was like an early, you know, he loved to get to work at like 4:30 in the morning. I had worked with another person at the same time he wouldn't show up at the office until like 7 o'clock at night. He would be off in court or with a client or doing meetings all during the day, and then he'd come in at like 7 o'clock, and that's when he wanted to have meetings. You know, so I'd be up early for Phil, right, and then there late with Steve, and then meanwhile I might be working with another partner who doesn't ever go to sleep. He's like always awake,
Yeah.
and he's just peppering emails all the time. And the last thing that any one of them wanted to hear was that you didn't get the job done, or you didn't do what you're supposed to do, or you didn't do it as well as is expected of you, because, well, Phil asked me to do this. Like that is on you to manage your own time, right? So you have to manage the partners, and if there's something you can't do, right, like you say to them, right, I can't do this, right, because I have this prior engagement. Is there some other way that, you know, some other time, some other, whatever it is, can get somebody else, whatever it is, but you don't wait until something's, you know, needs to get done
Yeah.
to be like, I didn't do it right because, right? If there's something preventing you from doing what you need to get done, you need to deal with that up front.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't think this is enough time to do this, or I need more help to do it. And you know, like sometimes, yeah, you have bosses who are impossible. I remember one time there was another partner who was very, all the partners were demanding. There was no non-demand. There were nice partners, but they were all demanding. And I remember one time I had one guy I was working with. He was a good guy, and he was like, I need you to do this, this, and this. And I was like, well, I have a court appearance in this other case. And he's like, who's that with? And I'm sitting in his office, and I'm like, I told him who the other partner was. And he's like, wait here. And he walks out, goes down to the other partner's office, right? And then comes back like 5 minutes later, and he's like, don't worry about that case anymore, right? You know, he's like, I cleared the table for you. You know, you are now mine. I own you,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, you have to find a way. It's called like managing up, right? You have to find a way to manage those expectations. But yeah, you have to adapt your way to the boss.
Yeah.
There's no other way. You can't be like, oh, I don't like to wake up early, or I like to go to bed late, or, you know, like, I don't like to work that hard, or, you know, like, if you don't have enough time, you gotta say, I don't have enough time. If you don't have the tools, you say, I don't have the tools. Whatever, you have to be honest, right? You know, that's the other thing, is like promising things, right? Oh, I'll get it done by Friday.
Yeah.
And then you don't deliver the goods either on time or the way that they're supposed to be done. Your boss is gonna be pissed off.
There's a phrase for that, right? It's like low expectations, high something, where you keep their expectations.
Yeah, managing expectations.
High delivery, no.
Over delivery?
Over delivery,
Yeah,
yes.
over delivery.
Under promise, over delivery.
Under promise, over delivery. You know, the classic of this is Star Trek, you know, Scotty.
Mm-hmm.
You never watched Star Trek, did you? So
I
this is famous, you know, every episode, right, something would happen to the Enterprise, which is the ship, right? Something would happen, and Scotty was the chief engineer, right? And Kirk would go down, or Scotty would come up to the bridge, and damage report, and Captain, he had a Scottish accent, that's what comes Scotty. I think it was Scottish. And Captain, you know, the pulse generators are, I'm doing a very poor Scottish accent, you know, are offline, and it might take, you know, one could get them back online. He's like, I'll work as hard as I can, Captain, but it might take 4 days or whatever it is. You know, we can't do it in time. And of course, they'd all run around. And then Scotty, you know, at the end of the episode, would get everything back up, you know, 2 days early or whatever, or, you know, an hour earlier than what they thought. So it's up there, the clock is ticking down. You think it's going to expire, then all of a sudden Scotty comes through. And I think there was a subsequent one of the movies where he explains to like one of his underlings, you know, like this is what he's been doing the whole time, which is, you know, if you think it's going to take 24 hours, you tell them 48. So that way you always look good.
Oh, it's like when I used to work in marketing, you know, when I would have to send an email that I knew was very important, wait until it's later in the evening so that they know that you're working hard at home in your own free time.
You know, there's another kind of old adage about this type of thing, which is, you know, you should always, if you want to make a good impression on your boss, you always get there before you get into the office, before your boss gets in, and leave after your boss leaves.
That happens in Japan, and that's an epidemic that is harming a lot of people.
Well, that's because all of them are doing it, right?
Yeah.
Where in the United States, there's only going to be 1 or 2 people who actually follow that advice.
Be that guy.
You know, so if you really want to get ahead, make sure your car, and you don't have to even be in the office, but if your car is in the parking lot, you know, like when your boss rolls in, he's going to be like, oh, that Kevin guy, he's a go-getter, he really wants it.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're always there working when your boss leaves, I always felt, I mean, I had again, when I was working with these partners, I would never leave before my partners left, ever. I was always there, and if there was some reason that I had to leave, like I had some other, I would tell them before, I'd be like, oh, I have to leave early tonight, do you need me? Because I'll cancel my plans, right? And they would always be like, no, it's fine. But even that you would go to them and say like, hey, listen, you come first, what do you need me to do? If you don't need me, can I go? Right? I mean, but you have to tell them. You don't tell them at 8 o'clock, right? When they're working, oh, I have plans. You say it like in the afternoon, you say, hey, listen, I'll stay, I'll cancel these plans, but I have an 8 o'clock that I'm gonna go to dinner, whatever, right? Yeah. My sister's, whatever, bar mitzvah, I don't know. Yeah. And then that way, they're like, oh man, shit, this guy is, you know, he's about it. Yeah. You know, that's how you do it.
That's also why I never empty the dishwasher when no one else is home.
You want to make sure they know.
Yeah, they know it's happening. You know, you don't get credit unless.
Yeah, because it's just like the dishwasher emptied itself.
Yeah. You know.
That's a good idea. You want to make sure your work is recognized. I agree.
It's terrible.
And you make a lot of noise while you're doing it, so people really notice.
Yeah.
Whenever that my wife does that, it means that I have to go over and help her.
That's good.
Know, which I do. I don't know. She's never said that, but like that's how I do it.
That's communication. That's really
good.
That's nice. That is nice.
See, look at this. The keys to success. Right here. I'm handing them to all of you guys.
I don't think a person who, like, not shoves off, but doesn't internalize the importance of manners could make it in a jiu-jitsu academy. Because it's so important.
You can kind of be on the spectrum, right? You can be totally. Like that is not like if you are that person who's like so focused, right? And you're not like always chatty. You're just so like, that's totally acceptable. Like jiu-jitsu is a place where you can be a little off, and no one is actually going to care.
Yeah.
Right? You'll actually be kind of charming. If you're rude and you're disrespectful and you're discourteous and you're not careful with your partners, then people will hate you.
Yeah.
You know, and or they won't like you, or they won't like training with you, right? But
you know what's sad? Because there's one thing when people are rude on purpose and they're like ready for people to kind of react.
yeah,
But then there are also people like who just don't realize that they're being rude. And then they just like they find themselves getting the shit kicked out of them.
it was confused look.
Yeah, it's like
Why are you mad at me?
you know, or people who they up to this point always roll hard because they don't know that other people or anybody knows.
I was totally guilty of that, right? I was totally guilty of not understanding that the people who are better than you are not made of stone. They have nerves and they feel pain, just like you do. It doesn't matter how elite an athlete they are. If you elbow them in the face, then or knee them in the nads, they are going to get angry because they're human beings.
Even not just rough like jiu-jitsu, but you know the attitude going into it. You know? And
well, your actions can be disrespectful. You don't have to say a word to be disrespectful. So.
But it sucks when you don't know that it's happening. It's awful.
This is why we should use our words and explain to people, hey, I get it. You just started. You don't know any better. But listen, that shit hurts, or that's really annoying. Stop doing it, right? Like, here's an example. I remember when I was doing Taekwondo, way back, right? Kicking somebody in the legs.
What?
There was, at the time I was doing it, that was like the biggest, rudest thing. You know why? It wasn't against the rules. It was not against the rules to kick somebody in the legs.
But you don't get points.
Well, you're not going to get points.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It's effective.
Yeah.
It's seen as like, it's like
it's the best place to kick.
it's kind of like, it doesn't take any skill.
What do you mean?
Well, it takes skill, but in their eyes, it wasn't like a spinning back kick,
it's like
right? It wasn't like, I don't have to be flexible. I don't have to kick you in the head.
It's like a Zord rush.
Maybe,
Yeah.
right? Where he has a StarCraft reference.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like, it's a low skill.
Cheese.
It hurts, it's effective. It's like a footlock, right? Like back in the day. It's like a footlock where if it was seen as like, you just can't, you're not skillful enough.
Maybe wrist lock. Wrist lock.
Wrist locks are actually hard. It's hard to get a wrist lock.
Yeah, but they're still cheesy.
They're cheesy, but they're at least difficult to get. Whereas a foot, if I'm playing guard, my foot is waving up in the air a lot of times. Not anymore, but it used to be.
Sure.
So then, it was kind of like seen as like, you're just doing it for footlock because you suck at passing the guard. If you were a real jiu-jitsu player, you would like pass my guard. You wouldn't sit on my, like, and try to footlock me. It's the same thing with that low kick,
Yeah.
right? It's not illegal. It's just seen as low skill.
That baffles me. That baffles me. That's the best place to kick. Your legs are already down there.
Yes.
Their legs are down there.
But and the other thing is, it's really hard to defend. And it's really hard to defend when you're actually trying to kick the other person in the head.
That's why.
So what it is, it's like actually illustrating the problem. Like, and this is, look, I'm sure high-level Taekwondo guys will murder you, like, technically, if you try kicking the legs all the time. I'm sure they are good enough to, like, just punish you.
Yeah.
But if you're just your average, everyday schmuck doing Taekwondo and you're 20 years
Sounds
old.
like you should kick everyone in the legs.
Yes. Well, but this is the thing, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's considered to be rude.
Yeah.
No one told you it was rude, right? And until you kick somebody in the leg the first time, and then they start like kicking you as hard as they possibly can, and punching you as hard as they possibly can, you're like, I don't know what happened. And then they gotta take you aside and be like, hey, you kicked me in my knee.
We're doing this
Yeah,
thing.
Taekwondo, when you suck in the beginning and you hit the person in the leg and then they rack you up, you're never going to do it again. You're just going to be like, okay, this is, and then when the next person kicks you in the leg, you're going to rack them up if you can because you're like, hey, we don't kick legs around.
I don't know. I think if you're there, I guess.
I'm talking about just the school, right? And you can still go to a lot of places and you can like heel hook somebody. Like if you heel hook somebody in the gi, right? What is your reaction?
I usually laugh.
You laugh, but people get pissed.
Oh, if I hook someone else?
No. If you just go to any jiu-jitsu school, like an average jiu-jitsu school, you go to pick anyone.
It's unexpected.
And it's unexpected.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen? That dude's gonna tune you up if they can. And if he can't do it, there's another guy over there who will come over and do it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Wow.
But I would
Totally legitimate move. Why
I would,
can't I heel hook with
I
the
would
gi?
tune someone up if they, tried to heel hook me in the gi. You would just be like, hey, no, that's not what that's for. You know?
Why not?
'Cause
Isn't it the same thing as kicking somebody in the leg and taekwondo?
It's different because if leg kicks are legal, then like you just need to sack up and just either get kicked in the leg or learn how to deal with
Hey,
it.
we're doing jiu-jitsu here. It's not the IBJJF.
Yeah,
I
but
don't see a ref here, bro.
But there is still like when you're wearing a gi, there's a set of rules that you're expected
That you
to
just
follow.
make up. You just made
We
them up.
didn't make up the rules. And
No, but
even-
where are the rules? Where's the rule in this academy? Where's the rule in this
It's
academy? You're
over-
not doing heel hooking a gi.
It's above the
Where?
the,
I don't say you can't do heel hooks in a gi.
Oh, well, okay. But like it's
Actually,
just,
there's an implicit rule because I say you're not allowed to do the techniques that you're not allowed to do at your belt level.
Nice.
So nobody's allowed to do heel hooks in the gi at any belt level.
I mean, as long as like I would agree with
But
you.
there's no explicit rule. I don't explicitly.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you if we train all the time, you and me, we wear the gi and we heel hook each other in the gi, and like that's fine. But like if I go to another academy, I'm gonna assume that they operate.
What if somebody else comes here at your academy?
Yeah. Then
You're wearing the gi,
that would deserve a conversation.
and they heel hook you.
Well, it would be you A, defend the heel hook. B, if you can't tap. C,
Yeah. No,
if you can't
obviously.
if you can't do any of those things, then you talk to them. Right? Your response shouldn't be, hey, don't do that. It should be defend.
Good job.
Yeah.
Tap, and then wreck them.
If you can. I mean, they just heel hooked you, so good luck. So.
No, but I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to somebody that they're not expecting because they're operating under convention.
I would wreck them though.
You would
because
totally wreck
if they didn't have the wherewithal to know that like they shouldn't heel hook you in the gi, then they probably don't deserve to be wrecked. But it would be surprising if someone had the ability to do a heel hook and at the same time didn't know you weren't supposed to do it in the gi. Or it would be interesting, right? Like, why do you come from an academy where that's allowed? What do you guys do? Do you guys?
I train out of my garage.
That's cool.
Right.
Like, I'm interested in hearing more about that. It's just here. Typically, we don't heel hook in the gi because it's just it's just easier that way. We don't have to have conversations every time we roll with every single person.
Yeah.
But like when you do go to,
I thought you did jiu-jitsu, bro.
but if you go to a different academy, like
Aren't you a black belt? Shouldn't you be able to defend it?
yeah, you should. But you should also be willing to like
And
get to
then
know
they
what
blow
the-
you up on social media like I just totally tapped this guy out and got all butthurt because I heel hooked him.
Yeah. I'd be mad if someone heel hooked me in the gi and they were like, yes, heel hooked him. Like, it was legit. And, I'd try not to be upset. But I'd be like, come on, man, like, that's not real. It's just not real. It's just, I was playing a different game, I was playing Monopoly, and here you are over here setting up mouse traps. And
I remember one time I went back to New York, and I had been away, right, for like 2 years or whatever. And I went to the no-gi class, and some white belt heel hooked me, and I was just like, there's like the whole full gamut of emotion, right? Like, I was pissed off at myself for getting heel hooked. I was pissed off at that guy because he was like a white belt. He wasn't supposed to, catch me, right? He wasn't supposed to be doing it, like in my mind. But
fear, denial.
yeah, everything, right? It was the whole gamut. And then I was like laughing because I was like, I deserve that, right? Like that was my fault.
You got all the way to acceptance.
Yeah, oh yeah. Went to that because I was like, like when you train outside of a place, right? Like if I had still been training there, because at that point they were all like heel hooks were in the water, right? Like everybody was heel hook in that class. So if you were in the class, you were going to get heel hooked by someone at some point.
Did you just say heel hooks are in the water?
Yes.
Like a fishing metaphor? Was that fishing imagery there?
No, but
okay.
kind of like everyone was drinking heel hooks. The heel hook Kool-Aid.
Oh, okay.
The heel, yeah. It was something that they were all working on.
Yeah.
And if you were in that class, you were learning. And John doesn't care if you're a white belt.
Yeah.
Right? You're there to learn, and he wants you to be know as much jiu-jitsu. And if he's not teaching different things to Gordon that he's teaching to, the white belt that just joined the class, or the blue belt that just joined the class. So, it was like an appreciation. Like at some point, I'm like, hey, good job. And then then I went a lot harder, or at least I didn't. I'm not sure if I went harder. I just was like, I realized that the white belts didn't feel any compunction about or reticence to heel hook anybody.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they were there to do. Like, why wouldn't you be defending this? We're in a no-gi class. You're a black belt. Why aren't you, like, so it's like you.
Wait, you were a black belt?
Yeah. I was probably, I could have been a brown belt. Either way, it was totally, like, embarrassing.
Yeah.
It was totally embarrassing. But then I checked myself and I said, like, okay, I've been training. This was when I think I was still training over in Mountain View where, like, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't do a full lock anything, right? And I didn't have, like, first of all, I was totally unprepared in the sense of, like, mentally not thinking, like, this person was even going to attempt any of these things.
Yeah.
Right? So I was totally caught off guard that way. It wasn't even in my mind that a white belt would even try to do this stuff.
Yeah.
But then it was like, you leave, you're operating in a certain place where even, like, I had an inflated ego about these techniques because no one else did them. I was the only one who was doing them at the time, right? So I was like, oh yeah, I know all this shit. And then you go back to where people are doing it every day, all day, and you get caught and you're like, this is why I like to train here. This is why this is a good place. This is why people come out of here and their jiu-jitsu is exceptional because they're not limited by these artificial kind of, again, is this transferable? Is this doing this guy a good favor? Does he go to a tournament and do well if he's only been doing heel hooks in the gym? You're not going to be able to heel hook that guy, like when he gets to be a purple belt or a brown belt, you're not going to be able to heel hook him or her, right? Now, maybe not bearing fruit, at the white belt, blue belt level, but that guy's going to be, or that person's going to be a beast, down the road.
Having a brown belt at white belt?
Yeah, but it was one of those things where you're kind of like, look, I'm not going to give this guy too much credit. I was sleepwalking through it.
Even if, like, a sleepwalking brown belt, in my opinion, like, normally...
No, I give him credit. I give him credit. But he didn't do it again.
Yeah.
And then that was still the situation where I was like, I wouldn't do it. Like, so there's the reverse where you don't do things that the other person is not allowed to do. Right? Like, so if you're, like, I don't knee bar, I don't heel hook. So there was, like, in that role, like, I was foregoing, first of all, I was, like, sleepwalking, but second of all, I was, like, actively trying not to do a lot of things. Because, you're a white belt.
Yeah.
Could have been a blue belt. I don't know. Either way, it shouldn't have happened. But it's a good lesson, right, of the different conventions that we have or assumptions that we have training where we are and going to someplace else or vice versa, someone else coming in. But you gotta mind your P's and Q's, and you can't assume. I remember there's another story when I think it was maybe a white belt, where a wrestler came in and all he did was foot lock me, and it was no gi. So I thought it was exceptionally cheap because it was no gi because the foot lock with the gi, just like back then, you just hold the gi, you hold the collar, and they couldn't do anything, right? It was like okay, but it was no gi. So I would play guard, he would grab my foot, and he'd just foot lock the shit out of me, and he did it like 2 or 3 times to me, and I was so mad, right? And I was like, that's cheap, I was bought into this whole idea of, like, at that time, this was before I went to Henzo's, this was back when I was in Miami, and it's
not
like
real jiu-jitsu.
It's not real jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? It's kind of like but having said that, if you do that at the wrong time, the wrong place, like, I could have been really upset with that guy. I would have been totally off base, right? I would have totally been out of line to be upset with that guy for what he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't, he's doing what he does every day to every other person.
Yeah.
And I just didn't understand the context at which we were operating. But I didn't get, I was mad for a second, but I was more mad at myself than mad at him. I was just like, what the fuck?
But wait, are we still talking about the first white belt?
The first,
yeah.
But you should be defending yourself at all times, no matter who you're with.
The
against
thing is,
all
like,
techniques.
Especially
when you don't know who the person is.
A person might be a white belt, they might be a blue belt, but all it takes is for them to do everything right and you'll be caught.
Well, they do everything right and you sleep through it.
No, like, if they do everything right, even if you do everything right, if they do everything right more, like, you're gonna get caught. Like, just because the odds of them doing so are low doesn't mean they can't. Every once in a while, they just do everything in the right order and exactly how it should be, and you're caught. And it won't happen again because they might not know that they did everything the perfect way.
Right.
Right?
But I think there takes, even if someone does everything correct in the right order, if you only have to mess them up. Like, if you're just...
But sometimes.
Sometimes.
And every once in a while, that perfect storm brews where they just do everything exactly like, But that wasn't this situation. Yeah.
This situation was, I think, if I recall correctly, I thought that he
Are
was.
you sure that wasn't because you tapped?
Yeah, I tapped.
Yeah, so that sounds like that was the thing.
No, but I think what I thought was that he was trying for like a straight foot lock, and so I didn't defend because I was like, I'll just defend easily.
That was the
But
perfect
no, but
thing.
that's like an affirmative, like I am operating under a different set of rules than this person.
And it just so happened to be the perfect thing that he needed to do, right? Like
The thing that I had no, like, I did not even consider that he was actually going to do.
yeah, you know, that's
Yeah, but I
sounds
don't
like
consider.
it's-
I mean, I don't consider that as being like that's just
No,
me.
that's great jujitsu. Like
No, that's-
if I can,
That's you know what that is? That is an accident of misapprehension.
What do you mean? I don't know what that means at all.
That means that if you come in, right? Let's say you came in one day and you were like, "Hey, I'm here for the class," right? And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then you come into the class and I pull a knife and I stab you, right? And you're like, "Well, dude, why'd you stab me?" And I'm like, "Well, this is the knife fighting class."
What?
And you're like, "No, I thought we were doing jiu-jitsu." And I'm like, no, we're doing knife fighting. And then you die.
No.
Yeah, I was operating on a whole different set of rules.
Yeah,
You did a perfect
just
thing.
because you thought you were, like, you weren't. You were both.
If another example, let's say you come in, I'm here for class, and then the guy kicks you in the head and then proceeds to pound you out on the floor, and you're like, "What the heck?" And they're like, "Oh, this is MMA class."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, I thought I was here for jiu-jitsu." And they're like,
Yeah.
"No, it's MMA."
Yeah.
Well, no one told me we usually do we do jiu-jitsu at this time. No one told me that this is an MMA class. And
That's
they're like,
not.
"Well, this is MMA. We have a different set of rules here. We get to kick and punch you."
I think
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that doesn't.
I didn't do the perfect thing to punch and kick you, right?
No,
I did the
they
thing
did,
that you
like,
were not
no,
in
that-
because
at-
you were in
at
a
the
different
time-
whole different class.
At the time, it doesn't matter that you were like.
Yes, it
You
does.
could have been temporarily blinded or something. Like, it doesn't matter the reasoning for you to do what you did. What he did for that situation was exactly what he needed to do to test.
Yes, yeah, but I'm saying it's not the perfect thing because I don't think it's.
It is the perfect thing because he won.
He didn't
The
win anything.
perfect. He
You know what he won?
got the tap.
He won a ticket to my game show after I wrecked him.
He won the knowledge that whatever he did.
No, but that's false because I
It
wouldn't.
was.
No, it's not.
Then
If-
why did you tap?
Huh?
Then why did you
No,
tap?
what I'm drawing the distinction of is not that he did the technique well. He did the technique well. The distinction is that if I had understood at the time
Yeah.
that he was
Yeah, but
he
you
was
didn't.
allowed to heal and he was
But
intended,
you didn't.
that would have never happened.
Yeah, but you did. So it was
But
perfect.
that's not perfect.
It was.
It's just fortuitous.
Yeah.
It's just
okay.
lucky.
Yeah. That's okay.
But okay, that's like me saying I knocked
I'm
you
not-
out
I'm
in a
not
fight
saying-
when
I'm
you
not
were like
saying-
I didn't know we were
I'm
fighting.
not saying he could do it again if he wanted to.
Well, then I don't
I'm
know
just
what you're
saying
talking
that like good jujitsu works.
I think
right?
taking advantage of a situation.
He wasn't taking advantage.
He
of
was.
He didn't know that you didn't.
No, but
know.
it doesn't have to be intentional to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I feel like it
No,
does.
I'm not saying he
Yeah,
did anything
he
wrong. I'm
didn't
saying
take
that I'm not
advantage.
giving him the credit that
You lost your advantage for your mistake. He didn't take
No,
advantage.
I'm not faulting him. I'm not saying
It
he's
seems
anything
like
wrong.
you're trying to.
I'm faulting myself. But I'm not saying
You're
what he
still
did was
trying to-
perfect.
It was perfect
It's
because
not
it worked. If it wasn't perfect, then it wouldn't have worked.
I mean,
I'm not saying like
I mean, I don't know what that means.
perfect means it got the job done. A perfect technique is one that works. That in
If
that
I
case,
punch you in the face and you fall and you are
it
knocked
also
out,
has
is
to
that
be
perfect?
legal.
Did I do something perfect?
Was it legal? Were you allowed to do it? Would punching me in the face cause me or you to be disqualified? Probably
It's
not.
not a question of disqualification.
Yeah,
It's just
it
you
is.
were not in any way, and we weren't even in the competition. We were just training.
Yeah, training, but
It's
you're
not
still
perfect.
playing a game. Like just because you're not playing professional Scrabble doesn't mean you're not playing Scrabble.
You just being contrary. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed our debate about me getting heel hooked. This is what I get for being vulnerable and telling you my mistakes. You just ridicule me. You see this kind of treatment I have to endure from this guy?
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel that.
I'm gonna, you're very insensitive. I'm not gonna tell you about anything, anytime that I get tapped ever again. You're blaming the victim. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love you.